Shalom Aleichem and welcome to Machain La'ira Amai Smicha. With all the news going around about the hostages, Baruch Hashem, some are being freed, and Nebuch after such a long time, let's discuss a little the mitzvah of Padion and Shivuyim. The Rambam in Hilchas Matnas, Padion and Shivuyim means freeing guests, freeing hostages. Somebody's taking a hostage, do whatever you could to release them. So the Rambam in Hilchas Matnas Aniyim Perek Ches Halacha Yud, the Rambam says like this: Padion Shivuyim, to free, to redeem anybody held captive, hostage. Koidem lefarnosas aniyim, that's a bigger tzedakah than supporting the poor. Ulechasoisam, and even a bigger tzedakah than to give food or shelter to the poor. And the Rambam adds the words, Ve'ein lecha mitzvah gedoyla kepidyon shvuyim. There is no greater mitzvah than to do this act of freeing a hostage. And the Rambam explains, because whatever kind feeling you have towards a person who's suffering, poor, sick, or whatever, of course those are very important things to do. But the hostage has them all. The Rambam says, Shahashavui, because one who's taken hostage, Hareyu B'chal Harevim, he could be included in the ones who are hunger, Hatzmeim, they're thirsty, Va'arumim, and they don't have proper clothing, Va'oimed B'sakanas Nefashes, and he's in a life-threatening situation. So he has the worst of the worst. And that's why it's one of the greatest mitzvahs. It's actually the greatest mitzvah of tzedakah. V'hamailin einav mipidyoinoi, the Rambam says, anybody who ignores the opportunity to free a hostage, hareza oiver, he's transgressing the law of leisa'ametz es levavcha, leisixpoitz es yotcha, and the law of leisamed al damreecha, and the law of le'yardenu b'farech le'inecha, and the mitzvahs say, the Rambam lists off, what do we have now? 1, 2, 3, 4 lavim, and a mitzvah saseh he also didn't do. The mitzvah saseh of Pasoyach Tiftach Es Yotcha, the mitzvah saseh of V'chaya Chicha Imach, the mitzvah saseh of Ahavta L'Recha Kamoicha, and Rambam says V'harbe Dvarim Ke'elu, many more things. If a person ignores and doesn't get involved in trying to free a hostage. So we see, and as the Rambam quotes, Ein lecha mitzvah gedoyla kepidyon d'shvuyim. There is no greater mitzvah than this mitzvah. The Shulchan Aruch in Yeridei Siman Reish Nun Beis Seif Gimel, the Mechaber adds another statement. He says, any moment that you're able to free a hostage early, and you're delaying it, says the Mechaber, have keilu shefech damim. Literally, it's like you're killing a person. So there is the thing that you should free them, and there is the thing that you should free them on timely manner. But because if you do it too fast, too slow, you're actually killing them. Every moment they're still in hostage. They're poor, they're hungry, and they're losing their life. So that's the importance of the mitzvah of Padion Shivuyim. However, and by the way, it's interesting to note that when a chassan and kala get engaged, they get married, there's the ksuba. The ksuba is the responsibilities that a husband takes upon himself to support his wife. And there are all the legal responsibilities, financial responsibilities. One of the responsibilities that a husband takes upon himself is, of course, if she becomes sick, he will pay for the bills to heal her, and Rahman al-Islam, if she passes away, to bury her. One of the responsibilities a husband takes upon himself is if his wife gets taken a hostage, he has to take his money and do whatever he could do to free her from captivity. So we see the concept of the mitzvah of Padion Shvuyim. Now the Gemara says in Gittin Daf Mem Hey, the Gemara says, Ein poidin as a shvuyin yoiser al kadei demeyem. However, if the terrorists who are holding these hostages are demanding an enormous number, an outrageous number of either money or whatever to return the hostage. So the Gemara says you don't free hostages on money that's way, way more than they're worth, however you value a person's life. Why not? Because you got the work. It's going to be a problem for the continuing way of life if you free hostages by paying off tremendous amount of ransom money. Something is going to go wrong. What's going to go wrong? So there are two ways how to look at it. One way how to look at it, it's a financial thing. The financial thing is that if you have to do whatever you could do to free a hostage, and even if they're asking for millions and billions of dollars, you have to put it together. It's a tremendous financial strain on the people to put it together, and not every time a person or a community is able to do it. So maybe when they tikkun ha'olam, you only have the responsibility up to feasible amounts. When it's enormous amounts, you can't. You're not responsible. Others say that it's not necessarily only a financial issue that exempts you, it's actually a security issue. If every time somebody demands ransom for a hostage, you have to respond and give whatever he wants, whatever the terrorist wants, then that becomes, God forbid, a security issue, because that's a perfect way for terrorists to make money. They'll get their money now, and they'll come back and take another hostage, and they'll ask whatever number they want. So as a security, as it shouldn't turn in for a business for them, we don't give them large sums of money. Mipnei tikkun ha'olam. That's what the Gemara says. Now, it's very interesting that this is actually, as I mentioned before, the Rambam says it also, in Hilchas Matnas Hayim and Shulchan Aruch says this in Yeridei Siman Reish Nun Beis. However, there is a story in the Gemara, a very famous story in the Gemara, where the Gemara says, Ma'aseh b'Rabbi Yeshua b'Rabbi Chananya. There's a story, let me tell you what this Gemara is. There's a story where Rabbi Yeshua ben Chananya, he was walking in a small city, he's walking in a big city in Rome, and they told him there's a kid, a Jewish child, that was taken into prison. And he's a Yefei Anayim, he's a good-looking kid and all that. And he's a very intelligent kid, and he's taken hostage. So Rabbi Yeshua went to the prison. He went to the prison, and he says, Mi nasan l'meshisa Yaakov v'Yisrael l'boizezim. It's a pasuk in Yeshayahu, which means, who had the right to do these type of things for the Jewish people? Why did these things happen? He quoted a pasuk Yeshaya, and so the kid responds from within the jail cell, and he says, Haloi Hashem zu chatonaloi. It's because we sinned to Hashem. We didn't follow his ways. He too, a younger kid, was able to respond with a pasuk. So instantly, Rabbi Yeshua ben Chananya knew that this is the kid, and he obviously saw that this kid knew these psukim, that he's a very intelligent, he's a big Talmud, a very special kid. So Rabbi Yeshua ben Chananya right then and there said, I promise, I commit that I will not leave this place until I find a way to redeem him. And whatever amount of money they ask for ransom, I'm going to pay for that. And the story was that he put together the tremendous amount of ransom money to free this kid. And eventually this kid became a tremendous leader in Klal Yisrael. Who was this kid? The famous Rabbi Yeshua ben Elisha. So the question they asked, a minute ago we said in the Gemara that the mitzvah of Pidyon Shvuim is a great, great mitzvah. However, when they're asking an enormous amount of ransom, you're not supposed to give it. Why did Rabbi Yeshua ben Chananya, give whatever they demanded for to free this child? So in the Paiskim, there are different answers for this. Tosfos gives an answer that we say that you don't free a person with enormous amount of money, that's only if it's a financial question. But if you know that the person is in a situation where it's a life and death situation, the guy might end up dying there, it's a sakana, it's a danger for his life, then you have to do whatever you do to save another Jew. And since Rabbi Yeshua ben Hananya felt that this kid in that prison would have been a life-threatening situation, he went out of his way to pay whatever he wanted. That is Tosfos' answer in Gittin. However, some say that makes sense if the reason why we don't pay enormous amount of money is a financial issue. If it's a financial issue, then listen, money doesn't mean anything when you're dealing with life and death situation. But if you accept that the reason why we don't give large sums of ransom is because it's a security issue, because if you free him, they're going to go ahead and do it again to another person, then how does it make a difference if it's a life and death situation? The Ramban actually says that it could be that whether or not it's a life and death situations, if they're still asking for an enormous amount of money, we have to think about the big picture and the future, not necessarily the mitzvah applies then. Other answers are given. Why did Rabbi Yeshua ben Hananya spend all this amount of money, even though the Gemara clearly said you shouldn't do it? Because this is an exception to the rule. This was a Talmud Chacham. For a Talmud Chacham, and obviously Rabbi Yeshua saw that when he said a random pasuk from the Navi Yeshayahu, the kid responded, maybe for a Talmud Chacham, you do have to invest all money, whatever amount of money, to save him. Now we know the famous story in history that the famous Maram Rothenburg, who was one of the great scholars in Germany in many years ago, and he was brought into prison. Whatever they accused him for something, and they took him to prison. And the only way he was going to be redeemed is if the community put together a large sum of money. And the community was going to do that, to free their great teacher, the Marami Rothenburg. However, Marami Rothenburg told his community, don't you dare do that. Don't you dare collect money to free me. Because the Shulchan Aruch says, the halacha is that when there's a large sum of ransom, you're not allowed to pay that ransom to free somebody. And he didn't allow himself to be freed, and he actually passed away in prison. The Marshal, the Reb Shlomo Luria, said, I'm actually shocked that the Maram did this, because based on this discussion we just had, even though the Gemara says that you don't pay large sums of ransom for a hostage, but the Maram in Rothenburg was a well-known Talmud Chacham, that we needed his Torah teaching, and there were exceptions for that. And the Marshal writes like this: it could be that the Maram, the reason why he did that, and he didn't allow his community to free him from captivity, he was worried that it's going to become a business by them, by the Goyim. And they're going to do it to every Jewish scholar. And not only it will be a business, forget about the Torah learning will also, God forbid, stop, because they'll take hostage for every Jewish scholar, and then we won't even have the spreading of the Torah. This is the importance of the mitzvah of Pidyon Shvuyin, how a person has to go out of the way to try to help every Jew in trouble. And sometimes you have to think about the future.